aunt and uncle just were struggling to get started. And he took me and I helped him on his farm, on his chicken farm.
Chicken farm, and those guys.
Henry Gelden was not Gelden. What was his last name? He was.
It's going to come back to you later. Yeah. I mean, at a different time when.
Yeah, he lived there for quite a while before he moved to Modesto.
So you knew Rabbi Groudens?
Rabbi Groudens I met in Modesto. He was here. He was the head of the Talmud Torah here.
He was?
Then he was real Orthodox. No, he isn't that Orthodox.
I thought he was a conservative rabbi.
Yes. He's less than
my
conservative.
My cousin's in Fresno. But Modesto, I was in a Zionist youth movement, and his daughter was very active.
Yeah.
And there were a whole bunch of kids. His daughter moved to Israel.
Yeah, one is in Israel.
Yeah, and she was very active. Yeah. She was my counselor. I didn't know you lived there. That's fascinating. I love it.
Oh, and Modesto, the man is...
Got that. Now you can have a seat.
I can even sit like that.
You can go when you want to.
Okay. The Surviving Generations of the Holocaust, based in Seattle, Washington, has taken on the project of videotaping eyewitness accounts of the Holocaust from those individuals who survived the Nazi reign of terror. Millions of people were annihilated just because they were Jewish. The goals of this project are, 1, to educate the current and future generations about the Holocaust, with the hope that those who learn what happened will not allow it to happen again to any group of people. 2, to refute false allegations by neo-Nazis and revisionist historians that the Holocaust never occurred, and 3rd, to refute the commonly held notion that the Jewish people offered little, if any, resistance to the Nazis. The voices of the dead are silent. The voices of the survivors must live on forever. My name is Sandy Samuel. Today I am interviewing Fred Roer, a Holocaust survivor. He was born in Karpen, Germany. Mr. Roer, in order to put your experiences in perspective, let's discuss your life before the war. If you would, please state your full name.
My name is Fred Roer. Before the war, it was Fritz Roer. I was born in November 1920 in Karpen, that's near Cologne, in Germany. My parents were Karl Roer and Elsie Roer, and both were born, my mother was born in the same place, in Karpen, on generations back, came all from this little town which had about 5,000 inhabitants. About 100 of them were Jewish. This town had a synagogue, a one-room schoolhouse, and everybody lived, before Hitler came, a normal life which you would find today here in America. Everybody knew each other. More or less everybody knew what everybody else was cooking on the day. And so, with other words, you lived a normal life as a German with a Jewish religion. That was the opinion you had. And like I said, for generations and generations back, my great-great-grandparents, I can prove on the cemetery there, a little Jewish cemetery, are buried there, which lived in this town. And we had, and my dad was elected to the town council and was quite active in community deals. He was born about 10 miles away in a little town.
What was his name again?
Karl Roer.
Karl Roer.
And he was born in Buer, which is also near Cologne. And his father started a plumbing business there with a hardware store. And my dad opened the same in Karpen when he got married. And so with two businesses, and which worked together. His parents came in from a town about 20 miles away and lived there for generations and generations. He was a soldier in World War One. He was a real, brought up real German. And we lived a normal life. All my friends were German. I played soccer on the town team. At the age from 6 years on till in 1934, when Hitler was there, I was kicked off the team. And like I said before, all my friends were Germans, and all we did is play like any little town kids, play in the forest.
What kind of school did you go to? What type of education did you have?
Well, the education is another deal by itself. I went first to the one-room Jewish school for 4 years. The teachers were already, to a certain extent, not up to par because of the pressure being put on. After that, I went for 4 years to high school. What would be equivalent to a high school here was there called a gymnasium. You had to pass the entrance exam. The gymnasium was not like here that it was free, you had to pay for it. And after 4 years over there, I was 34. I was kicked out again because
how
of
old were you
being
at that
Jewish.
time?
I was 13.
And this school was a school with Jews and non-Jews?
I was the only Jew in the school.
You were the only Jew in the school?
They were all non-Jews. And was run by a priest who actually couldn't do anything about. His teachers were insisting to get me out of there.
Did you have any brothers or sisters?
I had one brother who was 5 years older than myself, and he was an apprentice in the plumbing and electricity because of we were slated to take over the business. When I was 7 years old, my dad was killed in a streetcar accident.
Mm-hmm.
So between my grandpa and my mother, they tried to keep the business going until we boys were big enough to take over.
What was your brother's name?
My brother's name was Herman.
Herman
Roer.
Roer.
Yeah.
How would you describe your family standard of living? I mean, were you living fairly well?
I would say we would be upper middle class. We lived in a house with 5 bedrooms and had a maid, live-in maid, and financially we were fairly well off. And maybe this was part of a trouble that we didn't get out of Germany in time. But the other part was my mother, a widow with 2 little young boys, was thinking of getting an education, and the business until 38, when it was being closed, was in spite of everything else, was still quite well or quite good. And all the people, like I said, my mother grew up in the town, everybody knew her, so they still weren't that hard on us, the Nazi deal.
What was the level of observance like in your home, Jewish observance?
I would say we were conservative. My grandmother on my father's side was very Orthodox. I had an uncle who was real Orthodox, living in the neighborhood, and my grandpa was between Orthodox and conservative. My grandma was as Orthodox that she wouldn't eat at our place because we didn't have my mother wasn't that strict, what you would call Orthodox. But we were raised Jewish. Friday night would be, we would go to shul, and after that had our dinner, and Saturday would be, we would observe everything. We would go to synagogue in the morning and the evening. But that was because of the small town, everybody would do that. So this is part of the Jewish observance there.
So it was a rather tight-knit Jewish community.
It was a very tight-knit community, and lots of them was related to cousins, and it was tight-knit because the small group it was, and there's one synagogue, and everything turned around this one synagogue. So this was part of the...
You alluded to the fact that the non-Jewish community and the Jewish community had a fairly good relationship one with the other. That was, for how long did that last?
Well, before 1938, there was no difference between Jew or no Jew. The community was just one community. If there was a dance, everybody would go to the dance. Whether it was Jewish or no Jewish, nobody would even ask. And all the friends, every family had a non-Jewish friend, and everything was just like you would find it today in America. Nobody thought about anything that that would be any difference. This is...
And then when did this change, or did it change?
Well, it changed in 1933 when Hitler came to power. The first thing they did was boycotted the Jewish businesses. Had the brown-shirted guy standing in front, don't buy at the Jew. But like I said, still friends, and the town was, I would say, about at least 95% Catholics, and very, very strict Catholics to a certain extent. And in the beginning, they were Nazis, but they still were friendly to us because they could not see that. They would say, well, we don't mean you, the other Jews. And, but it still was, the pressure started in, and we lived there for that long, and the friends of my mother, the school friends of hers, were growing up with her, so they were all like one big family. So then in 1933, naturally, the whole thing started to change. When I dropped out of school, or was in 1935, I was forced to leave, and I was an apprentice in Cologne in a Jewish business.
How far away were you from Cologne?
About 12, 15 miles. And I was commute between this little town and Cologne, which was about an hour in the morning, an hour at night, by train. On the train, the Jews had to sit in the last wagon of the train, and if there was no room, they had to stand in the caboose there or something. Everything started to change naturally, and then signs appeared on the businesses, Jews and gypsies and dogs aren't being served here. And then in 1935 came these Nuremberg laws, which prohibited marriage or even contact between Jews or non-Jews. The Jews who had maids had to let the maids go. The maid had to be at least 45 years old if she could work, or Jewish, to be in a Jewish house to work there. And everything started to change. The books of the Jews were books written by Jews were being burned.
Did that happen to your family?
Well,
I mean, was your family, immediately victimized in Carbon?
yes, you were victimized in a not violent way, but you were victimized. I had an uncle living in the east part of Germany, and he was already in 35, very bad mishandled and beaten up, and he came back to the town where we lived, because up there in the east he couldn't live anymore. It was too dangerous. He would have just chased him out of town, because the eastern part of Germany was quite Nazi-oriented, and the anti-Semitism up there closer to Poland was very bad. And this is how the whole deal started. And then his family followed him to this little town, and his wife insisted that he leave Germany, and this was the first ones of our family who left in '38 for South America, for Colombia, because he had experienced the bad thing before we even had the bad deals going in this little town where we lived. The whole style, the whole lifestyle of change naturally. After this gymnasium, like I said before about the schooling, after gymnasium, you go about 6 years to gymnasium. This gives you the what would you say, the knowledge to go on to university. Without that, you will not be accepted at a university. So I was figuring out to become an engineer, but naturally everything was interrupted, and I became an apprentice in the plumbing. And this again, I couldn't finish in 1938. The Jewish businesses all had to be closed, and I never was able to finish. So my whole life is always a step behind finishing something, because of all the laws and all the things what happened during this whole German deal.
So what happened in 1938?
Well, in 1938, first of all, the Jews all had to have a passport with an ID card, not a passport, I would say an ID card, which was in bright red with a big yellow J on it. And every male had to take the middle name of Israel, and every woman had to have the middle name of Sarah. And you had to have this passport with you at all time. Then, which is quite well known, the Kristallnacht in 1938, some Jewish boy supposedly killed a German consulate employee, and the spontaneous uprising by the Nazis happened on the 9th of November in '38. In every little town at the same time the spontaneous uprising started. The synagogues were burned and looted. Every house was, not every house, but about every house was looted, and the china was broken, the linen was thrown out the windows were broken in the houses, in the synagogues, all the Torahs, the prayer books, the prayer shawls, the benches, all was thrown in one heap and set on fire. The synagogues itself were burned.
Did this happen in Karpen?
Yes, it happened.
And so this happened to your home also? In your
Well,
home.
we were lucky. Our home wasn't too badly damaged. But my grandma and an unmarried daughter lived in a home by themselves, and there wasn't one picture what wasn't hit with axes, and there wasn't one window what wasn't broken in the whole house. The whole china was in 1,000 pieces. The linen was all stolen. The sterling was gone. With other words, everything was looted in the house, and there were, I would say, about out of the, I think there were about 30 Jewish families, roughly. I would say 25 of the houses were all looted and destroyed and hit and just demolished. Looked like a bomb exploded inside. And my grandma and my aunt scaled through backyards, over fences, and came to our house the back way. And all night long people came over to our house because we were, why I couldn't tell you, but we were the lucky ones who had the less damage of everybody.
And at that point, what did your family do?
Well, the family lived, they stayed with us for a while, and everybody tried to get out of Germany. From that time on, all the men up to 60 years were arrested and sent into concentration camps. But my brother and I were not arrested because the chief of police called my mother and says, I have to come and arrest the boys, tell them to get out of town, to start hiding. So my brother went to a farmer we knew, who was not anti-Semitic, naturally. And he lived away in the country, an isolated farm, and he hid there. And I went to my grandpa, who was in his 80s at that time, and thought I would be safe there.
Where did he live, your grandfather?
My grandfather lived in Roer, which was about 8-10 miles away. I took the bicycle and went through the forest and back streets to his house. And when I was there, all of a sudden the Nazi came and checked, were looking for my brother, I imagine. And I was hiding under the bed, and they marched right by me and didn't notice me. After that, I went to a next town in Düren, where I had an aunt who lived alone with a daughter because her husband was in France. And I went to this aunt's house because I thought they wouldn't look there either, because two women alone, when I was on the streetcar from the railway station to their house, all of a sudden my cousin comes into the car, a streetcar, and I gave her a sign not to recognize me, so that nobody noticed I was running away. So I went to their house, and there again the Nazis came looking for somebody, and I was hiding behind the door. So I locked out, actually. And 2 days later, the chief of police called my mother and said, the boys can come home. It is over, this arresting of
How
boys.
long did that period of time last, that running from town to town?
Well, only about 2 days. But it was, everybody was afraid. Every Jew was being prosecuted, every Jew was being sought, and the looting and burning went on till in the early mornings. Now the irony of the December the 9th is that November the 9th is that on November the 9th last year, the Berlin Wall came down.
It's unbelievable.
And one other thing, on November the 9th in 1923, there was this big putsch in Munich when they arrested Hitler for the first time, when he started fighting other people there. When the Nazi Party had their first big meeting, or their first big get-together, when they put him into jail, and where he wrote My Kampf, this is his prayer book. That everything happened on November the 9th. It's a funny thing. But this year, last year when it happened in Berlin, the whole Germans were singing and dancing, but nobody was remembering 46 years back, of 38 to 41 to 49, from 38 to 89. That on that same day, the Nazis were destroying also dancing and destroying the homes of the Jews.
When you went back, did you still continue to live in Kerpen?
We lived in Kerpen for about also 3-4 months. Then we had to vacate the house, and the house became the headquarters for the Nazi party. They took the house over. And we moved then to Cologne, and we lived in a so-called Judenwohnung, which means a Jewish apartment. Out of a 5-bedroom home, we moved into a 1-bedroom apartment, which was quite a change. But then we, being a plumber, I worked with the other Jewish boy. We could not work with non-Jews anymore together. So we worked as plumbers, 2 Jewish boys together in a big housing project, a big, not housing project, a big project for about 3 months, and then we had to lay us off. After that, I worked for about 1.5 years, or around 1.5 years, building bunkers for the German, for the safety, the air, for against bombs. At that time already, they started preparing for war.
You were living with your mother?
And my mother, my brother, and myself. And then our other family lived on the same apartment we had to share. And the rations, there were rations cards, and everything was naturally for the Jews only half rations. But we had one of my mother's best girlfriend, which wasn't Jewish. She used to bring eggs and butter and milk to the city from Kerpen to Cologne every week, 1 day in the week. And she would supply us with whatever we needed without ration cards. So we were lucky in that way that we still had, there was always black market, so there was still stuff to get. And then naturally everything broke down after 45, after 38, after the Kristallnacht. Naturally everybody tried to get out of Germany. Every Jew, every way you could find or every way you could get. For instance, for America you needed the quota number, and if your quota number was too high, you missed it.
What happened to you, though? I mean, were you at this point trying
We were trying every which way to get out of Germany. For instance, I typed the application for my uncle for the quota number for America and waited for hours for the next day. My uncle was able to get out of Germany, and we were, when the war started, 3 months away from getting out. On the day after Germany invaded Poland in '39, September 1st, 2 days later England and France declared war on Germany. The day England declared war, we got the visa to go to England for my brother and myself. Naturally, they didn't let us out anymore, not to England.
So how long did you live in Cologne?
We lived in Cologne till 41, then we were deported to Lodz, which was called in German Lichtenstadt, which is in Poland. And the deportation, we were the second transport. One transport was sent a week before us. The deal was you got a notice about 2-3 days before to be on the railway station at that time. You could take 100 German marks as well as a blanket and all the luggage you could carry, and that was it. Everything else you had to leave behind. Also in '38, after this Kristallnacht, all the gold and the jewelry the Jews had, with like fur coats and all this stuff, had to be turned in. And because the Germans said that the Jews were at fault, all for the destruction of the synagogues and everything, they levied a tax against every Jew, 25% of everybody's, not only income, of everybody's wealth or what everybody had to be turned over to the Nazis. And they confiscated every bank account and determined how much money you could take out every month.
So you were rationed in
Rationed in every way.
Was your whole family, was your entire family, your mother and your brother, you all deported together? And
we all were deported together. And
in what? How did they?
And we were deported in railway cars. And the cars were locked, all the windows closed, the trains were stopped. We arranged to sit down a while, and then somebody else was standing. And it took about 3 days till we came to Lodz, or Litzmannstadt, where it was called from the Germans, in Poland. We were put right into the ghetto. The ghetto in Poland was an area in the slums, which was fenced in with wires, with pointers on it. What do you call it?
Barbed wire.
Barbed wire. And the Nazis were all around it. The conditions there were horrible. First of all, they started to bring in Jews from all over Germany into this ghetto, what was overcrowded to start with. In a room, I would say about 10 by 12, there were 30 people sleeping and living, children, women, men, everything together in one room. The sanitary conditions were just unbelievable. Open sewage. The people that were living there, the Polish Jews, or the Jews of Lodz, were put in this thing in '39 already, and they were living there for 2 and 3 years.
So when was this exactly that you were in Lodz?
End of October in '41. And in the morning, there was a horse-drawn wagon, open hay wagon, going through the streets and picking up the dead people that were laying in the streets. Just throw them in there like piece of wood you throw in the wagon. And that was every morning, because the food was so bad, the conditions so bad, the people were starving from hunger. And the place was full of lice and cockroaches and typhus all over the place, no sanitation. The food were just some water with some beets in it or whatever they had. And the people were working in factories the Germans established for their war machine or outside, and they were brought outside in and out every day with the Gestapo watching them.
Is that what happened to you?
Excuse me. What happened to me was, after about 10 days, I was separated from my family, from my brother and mother, and I was shipped in a transport to a so-called Arbeitslager, which is a kind of a concentration camp, I would say, to Poznan, which was in German was called Poznan. People were taken off the street and just shipped away. So
Men, women, and children?
No, just men and women. I would say there was about, in this transport I went in, there were about 500 men, about 250 women, but the camps were separated naturally. And we came in a camp over there, which was living hell. I later on went to Auschwitz. Auschwitz is very well known, but I would say comparing Auschwitz with the camp in Poznan, I would say Auschwitz was a resort. The camp in Poznan was just living hell. And that was we came into a camp where there was a lot of Polish Jews there, which were already there for months. When we came there, that was the first Jews what came out from Germany, what came into the camp, and they didn't believe we were Jews because we didn't speak Yiddish. And on the side of that, we came from Germany, like you would pick up, let's say, 500 people here in Seattle and send them into a camp where the people are starving, and we were dressed real well. We were lucky we could take our own clothes along, and we could keep it there because this camp was not run by the Gestapo. It was run by the Gestapo and not by the SS guards. And the guards were a lot less. And the camp was not run under order of a concentration camp yet. But the circumstances in there were even worse. For instance, on the third day we were there, was a Sunday, to show us what the camp was like, we were marched into the stadium of the city of Poznan. Stadium I would, like the Husky Stadium or like the Memorial Stadium with a track around it. And on the track were 5 gallows with four on each side was a rope to hang somebody. So with other words, you could hang 20 people at the same time. And to tell us what was ahead of us, they marched us in there in formations, 5 abreast, and then they read the sentence for the people what would be hanged. And the reason for being hanged is one asked for a cigarette, one asked for a piece of bread, one picked up a cigarette top from the floor what the German had thrown away. The other one didn't work hard enough, and somebody tried to smuggle some bread into the camp. These were the sentences, and the only, with other words, for every misdeed, there was only one sentence, and that was hanging. So we had to watch 20 people to be hanged there. That's the first time I saw even a dead person in my life. And after that, after they were hanging there, they had left them hang, and we had to march around every gallows and look up at them, and to teach us a lesson what was ahead if we would not follow the rules and regulations. The camp itself the food was horrible. All you got was a bowl of hot water with some sugar beets, either sugar beets as a vegetable in it, or some kind of a melon, like a watermelon, or once in a while a potato, but the soup, the vegetable you only could imagine because the soup was just water. And in the winter time, all the vegetable or whatever it was frozen, and the soup was even made out of the frozen vegetables, so you can imagine what it tastes like.
Where did you live? What kind of living circumstance?
The living since where we lived was an old factory, and with different rooms where they manufactured stuff in, I guess. That was enclosed with barbed wires, and across from the street was where the camp command was. The camp was run by Jewish so-called policemen, which got all the orders from the guards outside. The camp was watched by the Gestapo. The wash facility was a room where there were pipes on the wall with holes drilled in, and the water was coming out. In the winter time, it was about 2.5 feet off the floor was a trough, like a pig trough. And in the winter time, the water was up to the trough, on the floor was ice to the trough. So if you wanted to wash, you had to go on top of the ice and get to the water. Now you can imagine how many people would wash. First of all, everybody was undernourished. A lot of them had typhus. After work in the evening, the main job was to kill the lice in your shirts and the cockroaches so that you could lay on the straw. There were double bunkers just built around the wall. Those were where you slept on. In the middle was a pot-belly stove or oven where we managed to smuggle some food in and cook there. Always somebody was standing outside guarding, if the guards came in. In this camp for a little while we were able to write cards to family what was still in Germany.
Did you do that?
Yeah, I had a sister-in-law in Germany. The deal was my brother and her were gonna get married just before this transportation, after this transportation deal started. So they got married about 2 weeks before the transportation started in order that they could go together. But when the transport started, the Nazis did not allow them to go together. So she had to stay back, and she stayed there till, I guess, the spring of '42 or so, early summer, and I was able to correspond with her. I could write a card a week or so, and sometimes they went through and sometimes they didn't. She was able to send me some packages once in a while, and we had code names to smuggle money into a package or something. So this helped me in the beginning very much. On side of that, we had our own clothes, and we were working. The Nazis wanted to make the city of Poznan, which was before World War I German, and naturally the Germans took it back when they moved in there, and they wanted to make it a show city. And they had us working on building a lake, a man-made lake. And the overseers all were Germans, and each one had a big walking stick or a whip with him, and I can say they could have filled the lake with blood from how many Jews were killed there, just hitting him and mistreating him in that working place.
So that's what you were doing every day? You were...
That every day, 7 days a week, from morning till night. And then later on, when the war started to turn a little bit, or they went into Russia and got stalled, I worked on they made to lake sewer in the city of Poznan. And in the winter time it gets so cold there because everything is flat and the wind blows, that when we dug the sewer ditches to lay the sewer in, when you came back in the morning, it was all the foot was frozen again, like cement, because it was so cold. The shovel literally froze to your hands, and we had just the clothes we had. And because I knew a little of, I knew how to lay pipes, because from learning plumbing, I was lucky to work with the crew what laid the pipes, and I was working with a lot of Polish people, which had rations too, but they had a lot more food than we had. So once in a while I got a piece of bread extra and some chicken pushed over to me, and nobody was licking. And if you got sick there, they brought you to the so-called hospital.
Did you get sick?
I did not, but a very good friend of mine who we grew up together, he lived also in Kerpen, got sick, and the ones what walked to the hospital, so-called hospital, 5% of them came back. The 95% we never saw again. The ones what were transported with an ambulance to the hospital never even made it to the hospital, because the ambulance had a hose on it where the exhaust pipe went right back into the ambulance, and the people just were gassed in the so-called ambulance.
And you were aware of this?
Oh yeah, we could see the hose being connected when they drove the people away. So that was the Poznan.
Mr. Roer, I have a question. Were there any acts of resistance there? Were there either religious observance of any sort, or?
Well, yes. Next week we have Pesach. The first Pesach in this camp, we managed to, we call it organize. That is to get some food illegally. We managed to get some flour, and we were able to bake some matzahs with flour and water in this pot-belly stove on a rock. We heated the rock, and then we made matzahs. We also were able to get a bottle of wine from the Polish workers, and we got green stuff like lettuce and stuff, and we actually held a Seder. Naturally, somebody was standing on the door watching whether some lager camp leader or somebody of the guards came in. Now in the middle, and some of them Polish Jews were very Jewish educated, and there was, I would say, 2 or 3 which knew the whole Haggadah by heart. So they were reciting the Haggadah. We were having, with the bone and the egg and everything, that Seder was completely set. Then all of a sudden the alarm, the guards are coming. Well, everybody dug into the beds, closed, and covered themselves with blankets. or whatever blanket we have. And in 2 seconds, the whole place was empty. There, like nothing was going on. Everybody grabbed, one got the cedar table, the other got the wine, and everybody had, in 2 seconds, the whole room was dark again, and everybody was sleeping. So we got away with it, and after the guards left, we finished the Seder.
How long were you in Poznan?
I was in Poznan from 41 till the spring of 43. Then 50 or so of us were sent into the country to do irrigation on a little river for the irrigation of the fields around there, which was a real lucky break for us, because we were able to get potatoes, fields the farmers had dug in for the winter time, and out in the fields covered with straw, and on straw of it was dirt. Then what we did, when the guards weren't watching, one of us would sneak away and crawl through the furrows into the, and we dug a hole into this, what would you call that? Into this reserves for the, where they kept their potatoes, some kept beets there. We would tunnel under and take out the potato and the beets and whatever was in them deal and smuggle them into the camp and then cook them in the camp at night. And were able to add to our rations what we got from the camp. And the same was, but we set traps for rabbits out there. If a chicken crossed the street, it was gone. So with taking chances, we were able to greatly improve our food supply.
And what were you doing in the country?
We were working, irrigating the river beds and the river sides so that the water could be irrigated into the fields.
And you were there for how long?
There we were from the spring to the fall of 43. Then all of a sudden the camp was closed up. We all were loaded in cattle wagons. The cattle wagons were closed. The little windows were just wires up on the ceiling. Otherwise the wagons were locked. On all, there were about 70, 80 pushed into a wagon as much as it would hold. And we didn't have any idea where we were being shipped from there. And after 2 days on the railway, there was one bucket of there for sanitary reasons. Now you must know that when you had all that water soup and everything, everybody had diarrhea all the time. So that bucket was running over in an hour. And that for 2 days there was no way to clean it or throw it out. After 2 days, all of a sudden we stopped on a lot of commotion. The shooting, the doors are being opened, everybody is shouting out, out, out. Guards in SS uniforms are there with the German dogs. Everybody has a bullwhip in their hands. On the other side of the track, there's trains being unloaded with women and children and men coming from some place. I think it was maybe Hungary or Holland or some place, a whole transport. And then finally we saw we were in Auschwitz. Now which is known quite well, this selection from Auschwitz, one to that side, one to that side, one lives, one goes to the gas chamber. Today you know, but at that time nobody knew what was what. Well, luckily, most of the boys what were in my transport all survived, all were sent into the camp, or not survived. I would say was sent into the camp. And then we saw children from the other transport, children taken away from their mothers, mothers taken away from their husbands. Everybody separated, old people and the kids on one side, the women to the other side. Horrible scenes. Families being torn apart, pregnant women. The guards with bayonets. I don't know whether I should go into that. I think it's a little too hard.
What happened to you at that point?
We were marched into the camp, to the camp in Auschwitz. When you march into the door, it says, Arbeit macht frei, which means if you work, you will be released, which is a lot of baloney. Nobody was released from there at any time. We were marched in, then on one side he told us, now everybody, be sure you put your suitcases all in one stack that everybody knows where they are. Put your clothes right on top of it. You're gonna be disinfected. You went into a barrack, kind of a barrack. You had to put your clothes in a neat pile and undress completely. Then you march like on a moving belt. You marched into the next room. Somebody inspected you, opened your mouth, looked in your teeth, looked in every cavity on your body that you weren't hiding anything. Then you were in the next room. There was a barber. He cut every hair on your body from top to bottom off. The hair was shorn off. After that, you went in a room where some guy was standing to wipe you down with a kind of a Clorox, Lysol. And from there, you went into a room where you took a shower. And after the shower, you came out and you got a prison uniform. And then you kept on going in line. You had to line up alphabetically. Naturally, the Germans had to do everything by the book. And then you were tattooed, the numbers on the arms, which everybody who was in Auschwitz has. This was the only camp where they tattooed people. And after that, you were lining up and stayed outside till the whole group was together. And this whole procedure took about 2 days without any food, without any sleep, standing at attention as soon as you were through. The whole place, all you heard was hollering and shouting and shooting and dogs barking and the bullwhips going. Complete confusion, so that everybody was in a very scary state. And after that, they put us into the so-called quarantine barracks. Everybody who came to Auschwitz went to the quarantine barracks. Well, we were in there for about a week. The barracks were...
So this was when exactly? This was
That was in, I would say, end of September, beginning of October in 1943. Then the barracks were overseen by so-called capos. Or capos were prisoners which had a better standing, but were treated by the SS a little better. Now, most of the capos in Auschwitz were not Jewish. They either were criminals or political prisoners. Some were homosexuals. Each one was identified with the number you had on your arm. Well, by the way, the number on the arm is only the Jews had that, not the other one. But each one had a number on their uniform.
So who was in charge of?
No, everybody. Every prisoner had that, the Jews and everybody. And next to the number was a triangle, and the color of the triangle told you why you were a prisoner. For instance, the political prisoner had a red triangle, the criminals had green, the Jews had yellow, the homosexual had pink. So you knew right away which kind of, you were identified for the guard who knew right away what you were.
So you were in this quarantine.
We were in that quarantine for a week, and after this week, about 500 of us were loaded into army wagons, trucks, open trucks, and were taken away again. No idea where we were going. And we ended up in a coal mine, in a camp that worked in a coal mine. The camp was called Yanina, which was a part of Auschwitz, so-called outer camp. When we got there, we were about 400 or 500. There was a big brick home and a barrack, which was half kitchen, and the other half was like a like a hospital. And then outside were the one house where the guards were in, and some barracks, which also had the guards. And there we were under the SS guards, the famous guards what every concentration camp had. Then up on the side was a latrine and one more barrack.
I think we're going to take a break now for a moment.
Okay.
Drink some water.
I have more water.
I would say end of September, beginning of October in 1943. Then the barracks were overseen by so-called capos. Our capos were prisoners which had a better standing, but were treated by the SS a little better. Now, most of the capos in Auschwitz were not Jewish. They either were criminals or political prisoners. Some were homosexuals. Each one was identified with the number you had on your arm. Well, by the way, the number on the arm is only the Jews had that, not the other one. But each one had a number on their uniform.
So who was in charge of?
No, everybody. Every prisoner had that, the Jews and everybody. And next to the number was a triangle, and the color of the triangle told you why you were a prisoner. For instance, the political prisoner had a red triangle. The criminals had green, the Jews had yellow, the homosexual had pink. So you knew right away which kind of, you were identified for the guard who knew right away what you were.
So you were in this quarantine.
We were in that quarantine for a week, and after this week, about 500 of us were loaded into army wagons, trucks and trucks, open trucks, and were taken away again. No idea where we were going. And we ended up in a coal mine, in a camp that worked in a coal mine. The camp was called Yanina, which was a part of Auschwitz, so-called outer camp. When we got there, we were about 400 or 500. There was a big brick home and a barrack, which was half kitchen, and the other half was like a like a hospital. And then outside were the one house where the guards were in, and some barracks, which also had the guards. And there we were under the SS guards, the famous guards what every concentration camp had. Then up on the side was a latrine and one more barrack.
I think we're going to take a break now for a moment.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to step down.
Drink some water.
Just a few seconds. We're ready. Whenever you're ready.
Mr. Roer, what type of work did you do in Yanina?
Yanina was a coal mine. I would say we worked about 300 yards, which would be about 1,000 feet down in the ground, in the coal mines, and we had 3 shifts, and I was mostly in the night shift. What we did is the coal mine was run by the German engineers, and the Polish miners were down in the mine. And what we had to do is shuffle the coal onto the conveyor belt or into the wagons after it was shut out with explosives. The mine itself was very wet with water, and you had to sometimes lay in the water and shuffle all night long. But we were able to get additional food. You see, I'm talking a lot about food. That was the main thing in your camp. Mm-hmm. What you were thinking about is only to get another slice of bread, to get another potato to eat. That was your whole get-go going, in hope to be liberated at some time that you can get out. And to get extra food, you had to be cunning, you had to call organized. For instance, in the coal mine, the miners lived in the little town, which is also called Yanina. That's the German name, I don't know the Polish name. And the towns weren't really developed or cultivated. At home, they burned the same lamps they used in the coal mine. The miners' lamps, that was where they burnt their lights with. They didn't have electricity. And the lamps there were filled with carbide, which when water drops on it, develops a gas, and that makes a light. So we were able, our lamps would be filled in the camp, and then we would go to the coal mine. And when we got there, we took the carbide out of our lamps and went through there was a big pile of where everybody before he went up in the elevator out of the shaft, out of the mine, there was a big pile of used up carbide. And we would go through that and dig out the little tiny pieces and put them in our lamps. On the pieces as big as, well, $1 or so, like a rock. We would sell to the miners for a piece of bread, for potato bread, for a piece of chicken or anything. So because they had their carbide rations, and at home, they couldn't light if they didn't have the carbide.
So should we pick up right where we started before? Okay. Oh. Okay, we're ready just to continue where you left off.
Yeah.
Sorry for the interruption.
Also, we sold our shoes, which was wooden shoes, to the Poles, and then said we lost them. We would get a beating. We would have to stand outside or something, but the main thing was to get additional food. We sold our prison uniforms, which the Poles dyed, and they used them as clothes. We had 2 sets of uniforms, one for the coal mine and one when after you showered, when you came out of the mine. So all you told the guards, my uniform is stolen. And he would naturally report it, and you would get a beating or something, but you still did it because you got extra food.
You worked in the mines?
In the mines down in the mine, shoveling coal. And then also there was a lot of sabotage going on there from the prisoners. For instance, I worked for a while on a winch which let the coal wagons go down a hill to the main road where the wagons would be connected to be pulled out, where the coal would be pulled out to the outside to be sorted. Well, what we did, we worked on the cable of the winch, which was a lot of little wires, a cable wire, and broke as many wires as we could. Then when the engineer came by, we would tell him, look, here the wire is breaking. You better have that replaced. And we knew they were very short on wires, so they only would replace it when it was absolutely necessary. So with other words, we covered ourselves. Then we let the wagon go full speed, and pulled the brakes on so that the cable snapped.
So this was a form of resistance on your
That
part?
was a form of resistance and sabotage. Then that coal wagon would slam into the main route, and for 3 or 4 days the route would be out of order because everything broke down. The walls were built up with wood piles, and the wood would all splinter, and the whole deal would cave in. So then they always had to reroute the deal.
How many people were in this camp?
We started out with 500, and then after we had an 8-hour shift, and after the shift in the first few years, we had to build more barracks and make the camp look nice. The camps always looked nice and clean. And so when we came home from the coal mine, which was already half hour to go there, half hour back, half hour shower. So with other words, we were already going for 10 hours, the minimum, sometimes 11 hours or more. Then we came back into the camp. We had to build more barracks and level more ground. And by the end of the end, when we left the camp in '45, we had 1,200 people there.
So you were in this camp for how long? In Yanina?
In Yanina, I was from what was it, September '43 till January '45, when the camp was dissolved.
How did the prisoners treat each other? Were there any laws of...
Well, there's a law of the camp. You could have left. I mean, everybody was hungry. Not everybody, but most of them were undernourished. And you could have left a piece of bread laid there. Nobody would have touched it, because there was a camp law that anybody who steals, he would be outcast, because everybody was in the same predicament. And the camaraderie and between the prisoners on side of the carports, naturally, which were mostly criminals for life. They were in there for life or something, for murder or whatever it was. Outside of them, everybody was actually in a good relationship if you consider the circumstances.
Were you all Jews?
Yes, well, I would say to 98% were Jews. There was few capos that weren't Jews.
And the capos, yeah.
Yeah, and then the guards naturally were all, a lot of, from the parts where the anti-Semitism is very high, like the part in Sudeten Germany and the Austria and Poland, what was used to be the Volksgerman. And one incident I want to bring up, what sticks out, I will only know of one prisoner who was able to escape, and that was in Yanina. And what happened there was, we later found out he was a high officer in the Polish army. He was a Polish prisoner of war who was also in the camp there. What the underground must have had connections with the Poles working in the mine. What he did, he put him into one of the coal wagons and covered him with coal and shipped him out with the coal wagon in the night shift. And the partisans or the resistance fighter must have been waiting outside on top where the coal come out and took him away. Naturally, because it happened in our shift, the whole camp was punished for it. But we especially, because we were supposed to watch out for each other. Anyhow, we were standing out in the cold. That was in the middle of winter, and freezing cold in Poland. We were standing out for 3 days and 3 nights, only to go to work for 8 hours, and then we came back and had to stand at attention.
Did you know the name of do you remember the name of the prisoner?
No, I don't. Walczak was his first name, but that's all I remember. And at that time, whoever fell down, he lay down. The other thing was, if you were sick in the camp, and every so often they came from Auschwitz, from the main camp, and checked the prison camp, the prison hospital, and everybody who was sick would be taken away. And 90% of them would be going right to the gas chambers. And I had a deal there on my knee. I had an infection and got some a cut, and then coal dust got into it. And he operated on it without any chloroform or anything. The doctor was a Jewish doctor. And what he did, he also took care of the guards for little sick injuries or sicknesses. What he did, he took the alcohol out of the thread for the sewing thread for medical purposes, and gave me to drink the alcohol, so that he knocked me out a little bit. And he tried to operate on my knee. He never did a good job of it. I still have trouble with it once in a while. But we got the notion that the Auschwitz was coming to check the hospital, and I went back to work and had the whole leg bandaged. And that day they came and took everybody out of the hospital and took them away.
So you were in Yanina until?
Till January 45, when the Russian army came towards Yanina, and the Germans evacuated Auschwitz and all the camps there. Then this so-called death march started. We were marched during the day, snow and wooden shoes, and the guards all around us, and the guards really got nasty then. They were nasty before, but then they got double nasty. And we were marched towards, I think it was Gleiwitz, which is a city up in eastern Germany. You see, Auschwitz was in the neighborhood of Krakow. So they marched us away from there. And at night, they would some guy would go ahead or drive ahead with a motorcycle, and he would go into a farm and tell the farmer, here, the food you boiling for the pigs you have to keep, that we have to give them Jews what are coming. And we would sleep in the barns there. And they would give us the pig food for eating, and that was all the food we got on the whole march.
How long was
every
this march?
night. And the march was about 8 to 10 days, and everybody who fell behind would be just shot. There was 2 or 3 guards would lag behind, and every prisoner who would lag behind, they would just shoot him.
Did you know where you were going?
No, we didn't know where we were going, no idea. But from one to the other, and every night some prisoners tried to hide in straw in the barns. And then every morning they would set the bloodhounds, the dogs, and dig them out. Then as soon as we were out of the farms and out on the free, open country, they would shoot everybody who tried to hide, to escape. So from there we marched 8 to 10 days in the same manner, marching during the day and sleeping in barns in the night time and getting the pig food, whatever was there, to eat at night. How much ever was there was divided. If the last one didn't get anything, that was bad luck. If there was no more food left, it was out of luck. And then from there, they loaded us into open coal wagons and pushed in as many people as they could into the wagon, standing up. And the train moved. We got one about 3 slices of this dark German bread and some water, and that was all we got into the train. Then pushed into the train with open in the middle of the winter, naturally in January in Poland, snowing, freezing cold, and pushed in like sardines to eat at night. How much ever was there was divided. If the last one didn't get anything, that was bad luck. If there was no more food left, it was out of luck. And then from there, they loaded us into open coal wagons and pushed in as many people as they could into the wagon, standing up. And the train moved. We got one about 3 slices of this dark German bread and some water, and that was all we got into the train. Then pushed into the train with open in the middle of the winter, naturally in January in Poland, snowing, freezing cold, and pushed in like sardines. And then the train moved, and we were on that train about 10 days, and came to Gross Rosen, which was our other concentration camp. the train stopped about every second day, and we could empty a latrine or a bucket, and we would get some more water. On every fourth day, we would get 3 more slices of bread, and that was the whole food we got for the 10 days on the train. When they opened up the trains in Groß-Rosen, everybody was more or less standing erect. Half of the train was standing erect, the other half was laying down, because we could not take out the people that were dying. So with half of the train was dead, at least half, and the other ones were pushed together in corners. In fact, at night, we covered ourselves with the bodies of the dead people. And that's the first time I saw people eat meat of other people. That was on this train ride. Well, I think that's enough of that. When we came into Groß-Rosen, Groß-Rosen was another concentration camp, like I said before, which was filled to capacity. Now, all of a sudden, there came the other camps what were in the east, what were evacuated because the Russians were coming into this Groß-Rosen. So with other words, all of a sudden this camp was, there were, I would say, again, half as much people as the camp could hold in there. With other words, it was filled with 1.5 points of capacity.
How many would you guess?
I couldn't even guess. I mean, we were sleeping on straw on the floor, and when somebody had to turn over, the whole bunch had to turn, otherwise you couldn't move. And we were sleeping head to foot so that there more people could stack in. And just no way of sanitation there, because it was not built for that many people. If you were lucky, you got food. If you were not lucky, you were out of luck.
How long were you at Regensburg?
I was in there about a week, 10 days, 2 weeks, maybe. And then I was sent with about 500 other people, again in open cattle wagons, to Regensburg, which is in southern Germany. Now, Regensburg is the main highway crossing, the main railway crossing of southern Germany with the other part of Germany, of Austria, of the whole southern region of Germany. And what we 500 of us were put in a ballroom, which was layers of straw, and then about 2 feet to walk, another layer of straw. A ballroom that was maybe big enough for 200 people. We were packed in with 500. One bathroom for all the people. And we worked, the American bombers were coming at that time and were bombing the railway station, the crossing point, the main crossing point of the German railroad there. So we were put in there to fix the railways, the roads, the railway roads, the tracks, with other words. We had to fix them every time the American bombed them. We had to fix, so they all were bombed out. We were working from day, as long as it was daylight, we were working on fixing them railway tracks. And if the bombers came, the guards had bunkers where they could see out, and we had to stay in one area, out in the open. And the bombs were falling all around us.
This was already at what point in 1945?
That was in 45, in February, March, till April. End of April, I was in Regensburg. The lucky part about the deal bombing was on the trains got stuck there because the tracks were destroyed. And there were ammunition trains, there were food trains. For instance, the ammunition would be blowing, the shooting around there for days when they started fire. But at the same time, they would, the other trains, the food train, which was loaded with potatoes or sugar, would bake the potatoes, and the sugar would burning. So the guards were afraid to go close to them shooting trains, and we naturally didn't care. We smelled food, so we went to them train and loaded the potatoes and the sugar. And this was one part what helped, I would say, me survive the camp, because at the last months there, I was able to get additional nourishment. The conditions in the camp or in the ballroom were just horrible. There were so many lice that we thought the straw bed would move in the daytime when we were away. There was no way of keeping yourselves in any shape or any way clean. There was no way of doing it. The toilets always were plugged up and overflowing. It was the most horrible thing this last few months.
Was this all men, or were there men, women?
All men.
All men.
Then from there, when the Americans came from the other side into Germany, they started again moving us on a march towards Mauthausen, we found out later, towards Austria. And we were marching in end of April and beginning of May through the foothills of the Alps, still snow on the highways. We had on wooden shoes where the wood was worn away because they didn't have anything anymore. As stockings, we had, if we were lucky, we had a rack to put around our legs. And that march was for about 10 days. We started out with about 500, and I would say between 180 and 190 was what survived the march of 10 days. When I was lucky, the last night when we were in a barn, the next morning I tried to hide because I couldn't anymore. I was down and out. Now they found me with a dog, and that God said, well, when we get out of town, you will be dead. So what I did that last day, I switched in the column from the back to the front, from the front to the back in the middle, always staying in the middle of the group. And at night time we arrived at a marketplace. He told us to wait there. That was about after 10 days, and that was the last day.
It's May already.
It was May already. It was the 3rd of May, 2nd or 3rd of May. And that God saw me and said, well, tomorrow you're not going to get away from it. I'm going to kill you. But all of a sudden we were all by ourselves. The guards were gone. We were sitting in the middle of a little town named Lebenau on the border between Germany and Austria, and the guards took off. So then people there, the police, didn't know what to do with us. And in the neighborhood in the middle of a forest was a woman camp, but not Jewish. German women, political prisoners, prostitutes, women what didn't go to the army or something. Anyhow, they had them there in a camp. So they transported us, they emptied one barrack there and put us in there. And the guards there were not the SS. There was no more guards left. There was one policeman, an old policeman, German. He didn't know what to do with us or with the women anymore. So he just told us, stay all together, don't give me any trouble. He was pleading with us, and he was trying to give us whatever he could find on bread or anything, but he didn't have anything because the war was lost. The Germans didn't have any food or nothing left for themselves. And we stayed in that camp, I guess from Wednesday, I think it was Wednesday night till Friday. Friday night, we heard that the American army was in the neighborhood, but nobody came. So we were still worried, naturally, because we knew the guards must be hiding in the forest there or something. And all of a sudden, a group of soldiers drive up in a truck and come right in the camp, American soldiers. And naturally, everybody who could still move, let's say it that way, went out of their mind. And one incident happened there. One boy who was with me in the same room, in fact, we were sleeping in one bed, all of a sudden hollers to a soldier, I don't know the name exactly anymore, Mottel or something like that. The soldier looks at him, says, how do you know me? And this was his first cousin who grew up together and hadn't seen each other for, he left Poland just before the war started in 38, that was in 45. So they hadn't seen each other for about 7 years. And he didn't recognize him because we all were just skeletons.
How many people were liberated?
About 180 out of, in this group, out of the 500. And naturally, they right away embraced each other. And he didn't believe it was his cousin. The boys were grew up together. And the idea was, why the truck of people came, because this was a group of Jewish boys. They were with the army, and the American army didn't, at that point, take any more chances. They stopped fighting in the evening. They didn't go at night into forests. They didn't want to kill anybody who wasn't necessary to take chances anymore because the Germans were defeated. But this group of boys found out that there was a concentration camp. Jewish boys were over there at that camp, and they volunteered to come that night to liberate us. And they went back to about 15, 18 miles away was a prison, POW camp of American prisoners. And in that POW camp, they had quite a few Red Cross packages, which were sent over from America. So they took the truck and loaded the truck with Red Cross packages and brought them to us, because we were all just skeleton. I myself weighed 90 pounds. And I'm very heavy boned. I was one of the heaviest what was liberated. And they gave 2 of us a Red Cross package, meaning very well, but it was the worst thing they could have done, because we could not, our stomachs weren't able to digest margarine, butter, Pam, sardines, and what all was in the tuna fish, what was in them packages. So a lot of the boys got really sick from it, and even at that time, a lot of them still died after the liberation in the last few weeks.
So what happened to you once you were liberated?
My personal, on I think either Sunday or Monday, the American medical team, they took all the food away. They shaved our heads again on the little hair we had. Because we were so full of lies, they had to delouse us all. And then they gave us just underwear. That's all they could find. And the girls, that women camper was there, they were working on German uniforms. So all of a sudden, all the prisoners were working around in German uniforms. And then the guard, the military, what do you call them, the medics, started treating us. I was one of the first one they started cutting. My feet were swollen about double the size from frostbite, infected. And even now, when it gets cold in the wintertime, I can tell you right now where the frostbites were. My toes still start tickling and all that. But and after that, they put us in the barracks there and started giving us the food, the double rations, what the Germans got. We got Red Cross packages. We got army food. What the deal was, a lot of us got sick. I had typhoid for about 2 weeks right there after the liberation, and I was in a coma for at least a week. They didn't think I would make it.
And the Americans were treating you?
Yeah, the Americans were treating us, and they brought in German doctors too. And then afterwards, gradually recuperated. And what happened is that the barracks were long barracks, like the army barracks here. And on the side were the bunks to sleep. And in the middle, for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, they would wheel in, the American soldiers would wheel in tables loaded with food. By the time they came from the entrance to the middle of the room, the table was empty. The guy in command for this DP camp, what they called it at that time, said, I don't know what to do anymore. I can't get any more food than you guys eat.
So you were recuperating, you got out of the coma and you started to recuperate.
Yes. And they gave us so much food, I doubled my weight in about 2 months.
So you were up to?
I was up to about 180 pounds. A lot of it was swollen, you know, because it's not natural to gain that much food. But we weren't human beings, we were animals. I mean, if we saw food, we would go crazy. And even today, sometimes I wonder how we were able to get back into living a normal life. Because I tell you one incident. After I was about a month after the liberation, we went into the town there, and there was a cherry tree, but just cherry was coming on that tree, you know. And we hadn't seen cherries for 4, 5, 6 years. So we started picking cherries and eating them. Bunks to sleep, and in the middle, for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, they would wheel in, the American soldiers would wheel in tables loaded with food. By the time he came from the entrance to the middle of the room, the table was empty. The guy in command for this DP camp, what they called it at that time, said, I don't know what to do anymore. I can't get any more food than you guys eat.
So you were recuperating, you got out of the coma and you started to recuperate.
Yes. And he gave us so much food, I doubled my weight in about 2 months.
So you were up to?
I was up to about 180 pounds. A lot of it was swollen, you know, because it's not natural to gain that much food. But we weren't human beings, we were animals. I mean, if we saw food, we would go crazy. And even today, sometimes I wonder how we were able to get back into living a normal life. Because I tell you one incident. After I was about a month after the liberation, we went into the town there, and there was a cherry tree, but just cherry was coming on that tree, you know. And we hadn't seen cherries for 4, 5, 6 years. So we started picking cherries and eating them. The woman who owned the tree came out, no, you can't do that, and started trying to chase us away. And we were in town with the army truck, so we put a rope on the tree, on the truck, and pulled the whole tree out and took the tree along with us. I mean, the Germans tell us what we can eat or not eat. Who would think, you know? And I worked for a while with, well, what would it be? The Army CIA, finding prisoners, finding guards. We found one guard and brought him in.
So when was this? Excuse me, when was this? I mean, was this within 2 months of liberation?
2 months after liberation, yeah. And we brought him in, and after we saw how they were treated by the American army with kid gloves, naturally there wasn't, anyone we found wasn't brought in anymore. If he was brought in, he was 3/4 gone. I mean, before we turned him over to the Americans, because we were not human beings anymore.
How did you get beyond?
I don't know how.
I mean, what
I
happened
guess
after-
gradually. For instance, also, I was driving a motorcycle about 2 months afterwards when I had a German on the street. When he made a big fuss, I never was a Nazi, I don't take that, and so forth. All of a sudden, the MP came, an American MP came and said, what's going on? When he told me, well, he hit me and so forth, so the MP said, I take care of it. And he told me, in Yiddish, he said to me, you dumbhead, why didn't you kill him? Don't run him over only. And then from there, after I recovered enough, I went over to, I went on a train, and the train at that time wasn't even running. You had to hitch a ride into, I wanted to go back to Kerpen, to the town where we lived. If my brother or mother was alive, I didn't know at that time, we would have met there again. So that was my objection, or my objective, to get back to the town and find out whether somebody else was alive. But nobody ever was alive, and I don't know what happened to them.
How long did you remain in Kerpen?
I remained in Kerpen for about 4 years. It's a little over a little less than 4 years. I made the mistake to go from the American zone into the British zone. If I would have stayed in the American zone where I was liberated, I could have come to America a lot earlier. But in the British zone, I was one of the first ones in 49 who could leave Germany. And some more stories there, how to get in contact with my relatives in America, which is a story by itself. I have telegrams here from when my uncle found out the mail between Germany and America wasn't going at all because Germany was completely leveled, more or less. I had always a letter written in my pocket. When I found a Jewish American soldier, I would give him the letter and say, please send it. When I didn't have any addresses, or naturally from my relatives, I know I had one uncle in Seattle, and I always would write on there, Jewish Community Seattle, Max Horn, care of Jewish community. And one of them letters arrived here on Yom Kippur, when he had it handed to him in the shul.
Well, I guess time is getting, unfortunately, short. There's so much more to say. That's how you got to Seattle in a very short way.
In a short way.
But if you could leave a message for future generations, what would you like to tell them?
To be on the outlook that something like that could never happen again, or never be quiet when you see something is being done wrong. When some wrong is being done, always speak up. When any minority, whether it's Jewish or not Jewish, whatever we witness today in the countries in Russia and the provinces there, between the Muslims and the Kurds and whatever it is, it's just when any minority is in trouble, let's speak up and let's do whatever we can to let the people know that minority is not the one who is to blame, because every ill, whatever happens to any group of people, is always being blamed on minorities. And the biggest minority are the Jews. And through all the history, we know how bad and how hard it is for Jews at any time. Today, anti-Semitism in Russia is starting up again. Anti-Semitism in Poland is very bad again. Anti-Semitism in Germany is there again, all over the world. But I think we have to dare speak up about it. We don't have to shrink back. We should, whenever we see an article in the paper or something, we should react to it, not be quiet. There's this Pastor Niemöller, was a German pastor, theologian. I got his someplace. Well, I think here I have it. Yeah. After the war, he himself was imprisoned in a concentration camp. And after the war, he wrote, that is quoting him, in Germany, the Nazis first came for the communists, and I didn't speak up because I was the communist. Then they came for the Jews. I didn't speak up because I wasn't a Jew. Then they came for the trade unionists. I didn't speak up because I wasn't a trade unionist. Then they came for the Catholics. I didn't speak up because I was a Protestant. Then they came for me. And by that time, there was no one left to speak for me.
Thank you very much.
Is that it?
I'm sorry, we had
Almost ready. Here we go.
Mr. Roer, you have some fascinating documents from before the war and during the war that we'd really like to see.
Well, first of all, we have here my grandma's birth certificate, which, as you can see, has the Nazi stamp on it. Her name was Amelia Leise, but because she was Jewish, he added the name of Sarah. And on top of above the Geburtsurkunde says that the original did not have a preference or any. The original did not give the religion of any person, and but because it was in the Nazi time, the name Sarah was added, and the stamp says that the original doesn't show things like that.
Stop tape.
Got it. Go ahead.
This is my grandparents' marriage certificate, also made out during the Nazi time, and he did not add the name of Israel to my grandfather because he was, I guess, because he wasn't living anymore. But my grandma's, they put Sarah in to show that it is Jewish. And but on this certificate it says the Israeli, what means Jewish. This certificate, the original marriage certificate, shows the religious affiliation.
Cut.
That was my grandma's.
Not yet, not yet, not yet.
Oh.
Go ahead.
This is my grandma's passport, also given during the Nazi time, as you can see with the Nazi emblem, but also has a J, which indicates that she was Jewish. This way, everybody who just looked at that passport knew that this is a Jewish person. Also, the name Sarah is included again.
Cut.
Parents, when they This is part of a family.
Not yet.
Not that. This is a family Bible. As you can see there, it's a book you use for on cemeteries, and it tells you everything about the funeral and so forth and so on. Here is my grandmother's writing is there when about the death of my grandpa, and then my aunt added my grandmother's death date on the same page.
Cut.
It's a neat picture.
Go ahead.
This is a picture of my mother, my brother, and myself, taken about 1938, to send to the families, 2 uncles and my grandma and an aunt, which left Germany as a memorial before we left for camp, I guess. Just was a family picture taken at that time.
Stop tape.
Good. This is real good. Then the Kristallnacht.
I'll get this tape off, I promise.
That's okay. We'll deal with that after.
Okay, next
Let's do
one is
Kristallnacht. This is the toughie.
Here we have a picture of my great-grandparents, which was damaged in the Kristallnacht in the night of Clyde. If you can see, somebody used the back of the axe just to do damage to a picture which was hanging on the wall, and didn't mean anything, just to show how powerful you can be, to show how you can damage a little picture. Which happened, okay. This here is a picture of this one-room day school I was speaking about in the other time. And this was on an outing, and this is the whole school.
When was this taken?
This was taken approximately 1935, just before, when Hitler was there already, but before the schools was closed. The second picture is at the same outing. These are mothers of the children. And out of the 8 mothers, only 2 survived because they left Germany before the war, were able to leave after 1938. Everybody else was killed in the camps. The third picture is on the left. This boy, we are about the same age and grew up together. This one was about 5-6 years older than myself. In the middle is his wife. This picture, I would say, was taken in about 39-40, before the deportation started.
Okay, I think we should. If we don't, we have only 15 minutes. 15 minutes, so we should probably do the past.
This is maybe just that one soccer picture from before the time.
The soccer picture.
Or you want to let that go? That was the town soccer team.
The integrated. It was a team of made up of.
Mixed religion?
Yeah, both
Jews and non-Jews.
This one on the corner.
That's the only
That's
one.
just do that one, Debbie.
Just that one.
Just do that one, because he has a lot of other stuff.
That's pretty good for.
First shot?
Yeah, not bad. That's their photograph.
We're set.
This is a soccer team before the Nazi time. As you can see, there is me. This friend I grew up with is right next to me. And behind him is his brother, who also got both, my friend as well as his brother, got killed during the war. All the other boys on the picture are school friends, and not one of them, not one of the other one is Jewish.
Stop tape.
Good.
Make it short.
Very good. Very.
Here we have the identification cards, which was after the Kristallnacht in 1939. Every Jew had to have this card. These here are copies which I took out of the police records after the war. The original card was in a real bright red. As you can see, they have the J on it. Everybody had to be showing the left ear, as well as each one had the name Sarah, and for the women added, and for the men was Israel added. In other words, this J was in a bright yellow, it stood out of the card, so and every Jew had to carry these identification cards from 1939 on.
And those are those thumbprints on the side?
These are the fingerprints. That's what is the second finger on the right hand and the second finger on the left hand, showing as a print, fingerprinted.
What's the purple stamp?
The purple stamp is
Okay, wait. Yeah, I'm gonna get the purple stamp. Okay.
the purple stamp is the official stamp of the city wherever the cards were given out. Like this one was given in Kerpen. All three, in fact, was given in camp.
Stop tape. Thanks. See, it's
She'll give you the cue.
oh, try and get your thumb as low as possible, only because I want.
Probably in the
if
Columbia,
someone wants to stop
South.
and read that writing, I want him to be able to read it.
This here is a postcard my grandpa on my father's side wrote to my grandma on my mother's side, who was at that time in Colombia in South America. As you can see on the Nazi stamp, the stamp in the middle of the card indicates that this card was censored.
What was the date of that card?
The card was written on May the 29th, 1940. This is my grandpa's writing right on top there.
Okay, did we get what that card? We had the Nazi.
This is a card I wrote out of the concentration camp in Poznan to my sister-in-law, which wasn't able to go with us. And actually the card was for somebody else, for a non-Jewish person who was a very, very good friend of ours. As you can see, the address is Arbeitslager 5, which means work camp number 5 in Poznan. On the other side, it starts, dear family, Peter. And this Peter was a code. My sister-in-law on the code knew exactly for whom the card was meant. Also on the card it says everything is fine and that I heard nothing from my brother and mother. And also in codes we wrote things, but you stack money if they send me a package at the beginning of 42, or 41, I'm sorry. In the beginning of 41, for the first few months, they let us receive packages. With codes, I was able to tell them where to put money or certain articles I was not allowed to receive.
Stop tape.
Great.
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 This is a telegram showing that notifying my aunt in South America that I was alive right after the war. That was the first thing that he heard of me being alive. You can see Dora Frank is the name of my aunt, and it was sent from Cali in Colombia to another city in Colombia. My uncle in Cali sent it to my aunt after he got the notice from Seattle, where my uncle received it on Yom Kippur in Sinayu.
And what's the date of the telegram?
This was in 45, Yom Kippur 45. I think it's the 14th of October. No, September 17th. Right there is September 17th. That's the first my family heard that I survived the concentration camp.
Okay. Okay.
This is the first passport I got, or the first identification card given out by the U.S. government or U.S. Occupation government in Germany right after the war, and it was given in Laufen, in Lebanon, Laufen, which is, here it gives my number, which is showing on my arm from the concentration camp. Then here it lists the main camp and the date of the deportation from Germany, that it was Jewish, and that was the reason it was sent. This was the identification given out by the commander of the U.S. occupation army in that area, right next to the border between Germany and Austria.
Stop tape.
Hold up. Okay.
This here is the Sonderausweis, which means special identification card given out in the British zone for people that were politically, out of race or religion, imprisoned during the Nazi time. So you can see there's my picture, and there's the official stamp of the German government, which handed them out with the permission of the English government, which occupied that zone.
This,
This picture is taken in '49 with a friend who went together with me into Auschwitz, and then our numbers are exactly 20 numbers apart, as you can see right stamped on the arm. And there's right there is my number is 141,497. This is only in Auschwitz where the numbers put on. The other camps did not tattoo the number on your arm.